So Kendrick Lamar just dropped his new album GNX this past Friday, and I feel like overall he addressed everything on his project in the most simplistic but effective way. Now if you're heading into this album expecting this to be like a Damn or a Good Kid, Mad City, or even a To Pimp a Butterfly, you're not gonna get that, trust me. This project more so coincides with his Untitled album that really doesn't have that direct theme to it, and just feels like an breath of random songs thrown together, with various songs having different meanings and themes to it, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Kendrick on this project feels free at will of any standards that are set on him by the fans, his peers, and even the critics. As you could tell by the surprise drop of this album and the lack of promotion he put towards GNX. Only rumors from people in his circle and from his camp that a new Kendrick album was on the way, but nobody expected it to drop out of nowhere like it did, and I think Kendrick did that on purpose for that certain reason. Now I'm gonna start off on how I genuinely feel about GNX as a Kendrick fan, and what I feel like what are his strong suits, what are his weaknesses, and what he overall accomplished with this project. In a quick PSA, this is all strictly my opinion and how I feel about this project, so take everything with a grain of salt. Just cause I say it don't make it law or true. We all can have a difference of opinions about how we feel about an album, whether it's good or bad, but please, if you don't agree with my take on this album or think it's idiotic, or you just simply disagree with me, please comment your opinions about the project and why. Don't just be like, oh this is an L take, or this video is dumb. Like no, comment how you feel about the Kendrick album then, and why you think the way you do about it, and maybe it could change my mind. As I'm going back and constantly listening to GNX more and more, the album comes off as more of a celebration for the West Side and appreciation for the people that stood by him during his feud with Drake, as he surprisingly has tons of features throughout this project, with majority of them being from the West Coast, with guys like Dodie 6, Young Threat, Hitter J3, Letty Gunplay, and of course Roddy Ricch, all representing the West Coast in some form of fashion. And a lot of these guys, no offense, are pretty small artists, not necessarily names that'll jump out the paper. They have their own following and are pretty known in their city, but this is a big look to their careers overall, and to bring a lot of attention and spotlight to all these guys that was on Kendrick's album, where for a long time a lot of people felt like Kendrick didn't do enough for a lot of LA artists and hung them out to dry, and I feel like this is just due for these guys. You gotta remember, throughout the Drake and Kendrick beef, a lot of LA rappers were the vocalists behind Kendrick and riding for him no matter what, saying that Drake can't come to certain cities in California, y'all can't play no Drake music down here, Kendrick is the West Coast, he good over here. Not saying those were the exact words, but it was along that same sentiment, where it literally seemed like that California united as one to go against Drake representing for Kendrick. Even at the pop-out show, it gave off that West Coast family vibe, so I'm actually glad that he repaid a lot of these guys by putting them on his album while still sticking with the West Coast roots. Kendrick addresses Drake and Lil Wayne on the first track, Whacked Out Morals, first by him implying that he was hurt by Wayne's reaction by him getting a halftime at Super Bowl, saying that it's ironic that someone he looked up to feels the type of way that he's in the position he's in his career now.
Used to bump the Carter 3, I held my rolly chain proud, irony, I think my hard work let Lil Wayne down.
And staying 10 toes about how he feels about the Drake situation, saying that he'll take Drake and himself to hell before he calls a truce.
I never piece it up, that shit don't sit well with me. Before I take a truce, I'll take him to hell with me.
Kendrick also addressed how disappointed he was in Snoop for reposting the Drake diss song Taylor Made that was using AI, Tupac, and Snoop himself to diss Kendrick, which I thought was weird on Snoop's part, especially after multiple times himself as crowning Kendrick as the king of LA, and being an iconic rapper himself from Cali. It was definitely a weird move.
K-Dot, you are the king of the West.
Snoop posted Taylor Made, I prayed it was the edibles. I couldn't believe it, it was only right for me to let it go.
On the track like Man of the Garden, which was my favorite song on this project, he calls out Drake again towards the end of the song, wondering why he deserves the greatest of all time title.
Tell me why you think you deserve the greatest of all time.
The Heart Part 6 makes an appearance on this project as he reminisces about the early days of TDE. The track Luther is also one of my favorite songs on this project, as it samples Luther Vandross featuring SZA, as their vocals beautifully blends well together throughout the track. Whacked Out Morals was his most potent song in my opinion, as it was the intro to this album and it felt like he addressed everything off rip. Dodger Blue was also a song I enjoyed, featuring Wally the Sensei and Roddy Ricch, and the first couple times I heard this I was like, where was Roddy Ricch on this track? Like, his voice sounds so different on here, not in a bad way, but more so in a way that shocked and surprised me, cause I didn't know he really had range like that, but he really pushed the track forward and became the highlight of this song. Hey Now was a little bit different. At first I didn't really like the song, but the more and more I kept listening to it, it grew on me. And now I like really enjoy this a lot. The beat on here gave off Halloween vibes or a Ghostbuster type of sound. I know y'all gonna kill me for saying that, but to me it just felt different. Like, it's really hard to explain, but Dodie 6, he really killed the feature. Reincarnated was a sample of the legendary Tupac song, where I thought this track was gonna be a killer, but sadly it wasn't. I know he tried to use that same animated voice that Tupac had on his track on his song, but bruh, this just sounds awful. Like, the delivery isn't really there, his voice isn't really fitting that sound with that beat, and the punchlines just wasn't hitting to me. This song was a complete miss and a waste of a legendary Tupac beat. Squabble Up was a song when I first heard it, I didn't like it at all. I thought it was terrible, but as I'm often listening to it more and more, it's not really necessarily growing on me, but I more so understand the song, and its sound isn't really for me. Peekaboo is definitely the worst song on this album, and it sounds just as bad as the title of the track.
Hey, that's my bitch. Hey, that's my bitch.
The self-titled GNX felt more like a Kendrick feature than an actual Kendrick song, as the rappers featured on this track has more voice time than Kendrick himself, but doesn't really take the song anywhere, and it just feels dull. Gloria is the last track on this album, where he metaphorically talks about a pen and the trials and tribulations he's been through with him throughout his life, as SZA beautifully again sings really good on the hook, and it's really the highlight of this track. Gloria is a good song when you compare it to other tracks on this album, but when you put it against other outro songs on other Kendrick albums, it definitely doesn't hold a candle to them. Overall, this album was okay for Kendrick standards. Not the best, but not the worst either. It has its strong suits, like having replay value on a couple tracks. I could see some songs on here being at West Coast dance parties and stuff, or some becoming even big on the charts, but I don't think overall this album is a good body of work. It feels splurred and random, and like I said earlier, I feel like Kendrick purposely did that. He didn't really want a cohesive theme on his album so people can have standards for it. He just wanted this project to be out there so people can enjoy it for what it is.